recording is about to commence, sir.
Yeah.
It has started. So I'm just going to start with the interview with your credentials. Good day, all our viewers. Today we are very lucky, and it's a great opportunity for all of us, where we will be projecting Captain Pradeep Chawla, who has been none other than a true legend and a pioneer who has been for decades and has been at the helm of many, shipping companies. In particular, what I recall is Anglo-Eastern Ship Management, and of course, affiliated to the Union. But a person from our fraternity who does not know Captain Pradeep Chawla, perhaps I think he or she may be in a different domain. With respect to his introduction, of course, there's no dearth of it. There's absolutely no dearth of it. It's a ocean vast kind of thing, the things what he has participated. But in case if I start talking about the whole thing, it may take me a few hours and maybe more. So what we have done, we have jotted down his all expertise, basically to highlight the thing where he has actually not only excelled in the industry, but also pioneered the thing under his, the things were pioneered under his help. So, Captain Pradeep Chawla, sir, I welcome you at this podium, and please allow me to, talk about you. And I wish you a very good evening and a safe health. And I'm really we are very, we feel very much honored to have you at our podium, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me on your podium.
It has been our pleasure. It has been, let's say, we are lucky to have you, and you have some or the other managed to come at this podium of ours, which certainly will be viewed by quite a few TV channels, and it certainly is goes in our favor to have you, sir. As far as the introduction is concerned, Captain Pradeep Chawla, sir, started his sea career as a deck cadet way back in 1974. He proved up and graduated to the cadres of the hierarchy with shipping companies globally and attained a highest rank as a captain in 1986, that is the Master Mariner, at the age of 29, which certainly is commendable, sir. Commanded vessels having multinational crew, and he authored and pioneered the book named Safety at Sea in Hindi, which shows his true patriotism towards the nation and the country. However, it was, I believe, translated and interpreted in other languages as well. That was in year 1992. Thereafter, he spearheaded as a group managing director, QHSC, and training for Anglo-Eastern Union Group, as well as building up infrastructure to compete with the best of the best in the industry. And that's where he had excelled. Because during my sailing career also, I did sail for a short time with AESM. And Captain Pradeep Chawla's, ominous presence was, I think, felt everywhere, not only in the Anglo-Eastern ship management or the vessels, but I think globally. And that's where I say it has been an honor to host him at this podium. Furthermore, he has accolades following, so many credentials and credibility. However, as I say, if I had to talk about it at length, the time is too short. So he had been overseeing and monitoring the QHSC and the training for over 650 vessels, whilst inculcating the need of training and development of aspiring young mariners and globally. And I also would like to share, because of his vision and his perception, there have been so many MTIs which have been facilitated because of Captain Pradeep Chawla's vision, be it the training module, the training modem, or the simulator system is concerned. And that's where he facilitated in the development of training centers for the campus globally. He has conceptualized, supervised, and implemented IT platform for a learning and managing system for a competence management system, that is a virtual reality training system and gaming apps, as well as software for monitoring of the quality. That is for HSCQ, that is the health, safety, environment management. Furthermore, as we speak, he was a member of Intertanko Human Element Group and a member of Intertanko OCMF, steering the group on human element. At present, since Captain Pradeep Chawla has been on his new venture as being a legend and also now as an entrepreneur. Presently, he's the CEO and the founder of Maritime Knowledge Limited, which is providing a digital learning management system with contents of videos, gaming apps, and VR program with detailed analytic on the learning mindset of an organization. Captain Pradeep Chawla, sir, I don't know how to basically describe your decorum. It speaks for itself. It speaks volume for itself, sir.
Thank you for your kind words, Puneet.
No, certainly, sir. I don't think I would have any kind of a dignitary who would have such a high credentials than yours, sir. So, sir, with your new venture, would you like to apprise us and our viewers what actually is your perspective, sir?
Well, my perspective is born from my experience of dealing with the 30,000 seafarers and 650 ships, that the tendency to read large fat books is no longer existent. Most students of today in universities and in maritime colleges do not like to read fat books. So they like to absorb content through the videos, through gaming apps, and through programs in virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. So the way we teach people needs to change, because at the end of the day, education has one simple purpose: to transfer knowledge from someone who knows it to someone who needs it, and it should be then applied by the student in the real world. And there are lots and lots of studies that show that these methods of gaming apps, what immersive virtual reality and videos, are superior to a chalk and board classroom, and the retention recall is much better with these modern techniques. So taking into consideration the habits of the young people today, and I think most of us, we all hook to our phones. We have short spans of attention because we are bombarded with over information, and we also find it much easier to learn in bits and pieces rather than reading a long editorial about something. It's a world of headline news, instant news, etc. And then that prompted me to say, why not teach safety in the way the young people want it? That's the reason why I'm attempting to be an entrepreneur at age 66.
Again, salute, a big salute to you, sir. Now, allow me to ask you, sir, this whole infrastructure, what you're trying to build up all by yourself, is it pertaining to the maritime fraternity or is it for other walks of life as well, sir?
No, my concentration would be on the maritime industry because that's what I have lived through all my time since 1974. I think I don't know any other industry other than maritime at the moment, certainly to a certain depth that is required to make good products. So I will stick to the maritime industry in the foreseeable future.
Sir, it reminds me a quote which says, "Don't fear the man, fear his fate. It's the destiny which takes you to places." And looking at you in last few minutes, and certainly I'm so much impressed and obligated that you have such a clear, crystal clear vision. And no wonder about it that you have been always excelling for whatever task you have had in your hands, sir. Now, the other question which occurs to me, sir, is that of course When you talk about the training of the mariners, right? That's where you pioneered, be it Anglo-Eastern Union or the clubbed in together. What actually motivated you, sir? What were your zeal, zest, and quest with respect to that, sir?
Well, the motivation was the job. When, like all other seafarers, I came in looking for a shore job. And in 1992, there were not that many around. I remember sending 164 applications and not getting a single reply. And then it so happened that the job that I got in Anglo Eastern was in UHSE department. And soon after a few months, I would say, of being in quality assurance, I realized that quality assurance can only work well if each and every individual on board the ship and each one in the office has a high standard of knowledge and a culture of applying the knowledge and the culture of working as a team. So I think all human beings are more or less equally intelligent, and the job of a safety manager or training manager, in my opinion, is to be able to get the best out of the individuals. So there are three parts to being competent to prevent accidents. It's the knowledge. The next is uh, uh, at the most important, but knowledge, skill, and attitude. Sorry for the slight this thing.
No, sir.
My
Please,
phone,
please,
no, it's
please, sir.
okay. My phone rang, and so I was kind of looking at that
Please,
too.
sir. Please, sir.
So it's
Please.
knowledge, skill, and attitude. And the knowledge is the base that nobody can be a skillful at any job unless he knows the basics of that trade. You can't be a good carpenter if you don't know how to use the saw well. So you build the skill based on sound knowledge. And then the part which is the most difficult generally is that the individuals need to have the right attitude towards their work. So quality assurance is the net result of the entire organization working together. So when you say that a certain company has a higher quality or a lower quality, what you're basically judging is the complete number of people that form that organization, whether that's 100 people or 10,000 or 100,000 people. The net result is what we see in quality assurance. When we see, I always say that each department in an office is like a little gear in a watch. I know some of the watches don't have gears anymore, but if you take a manual watch and you look at the gears, even if one small gear has one tooth broken, that affects the timekeeping. Similarly, in an organization, if all the departments are working together, having the right knowledge, the right skill, and the right attitude, then overall that company starts to do better. And so quality assurance does not work without good knowledge, good skill, and good attitude of each and every person working in the company. So that's how what motivated me to start picking up on training issues so that as a company, Anglo Eastern would benefit from the overall power of the brains of each and every individual working towards the same goal.
Very rightly said, sir. I've got becoming bit inquisitive with your such an impressive response. How would you rate, sir, the attitude, aptitude, and skill, sir,
How do we
for any
rate it?
organization? Yes, sir.
Uh, I think in every organization, the best people to know about the quality of the organization are the people working within the company. The best experience of and the knowledge of the problems in a company are known at the shop floor, as they say. So the seafarers working on the ships, they'll tell you exactly what is the quality of the company that they are working for because they know best about how things are done in that company, not how things are written in the company in the safety management system, but how things are really done. So there is a bit of a gap in every organization about what we write, and what we do. And if that drift away from the written procedures, from good practices, tends to become large, that organization will have problems, whether it's shipboard accidents or financial problems or whatever. It's the drift from the right path that decides that is the company doing, where is the company going. So the attitude is best measured with the people working within the company. And if they are saying good things about a company, then the company is doing well because the employees make the company. A company is just brick and walls, right? An address somewhere, 80 Broad Street, Monrovia. That's not the company. The company is the people who are working for in that organization and how they are working in that organization. That's what decides the ratings of that company.
So is it likely to say what I've construed from you, this opinion, sir, that the attitude shall be the positive, and I believe the attitude is the first thing which construes towards 100%, and thereafter comes the skills and the ability and perhaps experience, sir, for any
It's
organization, sir?
it's a combination, right? You can have the right attitude, but if nobody's told you not to go into an enclosed space without gas checks, then there are still going to be fatalities, right? So the knowledge is required. The application of the knowledge is required that you actually do the gas tests. And so even if you're a well-meaning person but not having the right knowledge, things won't go well together. So a competent
But,
person is one who has all three in equal measure.
but if, allow me to ask you, I'm a bit little confused. If a person who has got a positive attitude, and the attitude, as we say, accrues towards 100%, and if he's got a positive attitude, obviously, in my own perception, he may be more adaptive to learn with a zeal and maybe more inquisitive, sir.
You Yeah, generally true that people with the right attitude also are better learners, but there
Yes,
are
sir.
also well-meaning people who do not have the right skill set or the right knowledge or the right experience. And hence, you need to work on all of these things in an organization to make it work well together.
So, basically, are we saying that with your expertise, that of course, attitude is, of course, the first right on top of the rung. Thereafter, with the amalgamation and the homogenization of the skills and adaptability that construes and perhaps brings us towards a common goal and a common path. Am I right, sir?
That's right. I mean, take the
Affirmative.
take the case of what's happening in the transition in the shipping industry now. There are
Yes, sir.
well-meaning chief engineers and masters in the sailing the ships today, but the world around
Yes, sir.
them is changing. We are going to be working with so many different alternate fuels in the next 10 years. So there is a need for every seafarer to upgrade their knowledge again. So while we've been having the knowledge in 20 years experience or whatever, but if we do not learn the new knowledge that is required for these alternate fuels, we are not going to be good at our job anymore. So while we had the right attitude, we had the knowledge and the skills for 25 years and things went well, the ecosystem around us changed and we're going to be using LNG or LPG or methanol or biofuel or whatever for the engines. And so every engineer today and every deck officer will need to relearn some of the stuff that they had learned 30 years ago. The knowledge is certainly an important part.
Yes, sir. Point noted, sir. Sir, in all fairness, of course, I'm much junior to you. I joined scene 79. But the way we look back as an old sea dog, of course, not comparable to you, sir, you're much senior to me. What do you think, sir, in your humble opinion? Today, even after having the state-of-the-art equipment on board, EGDES, EIS, all the electronic aids to navigation, still we have so many fiascos, sir. When we go back to our good old days, at least my good old days and your good old days, we didn't have all these means. We did not have all these comforts, but the ships were getting navigated. So, what do you think in the younger generation? What is the thing which is lacking when they have been served everything on the platter, sir?
Yeah, I think I differ in my views from what you just said. During our time, the ships were actually not running as good as the ships that are running today. We
Efficiency wise.
have not only efficiency, including safety. So we did not even have the systems in the various companies in the industry to have accident reporting as a requirement. So there were companies where everything got reported, and there were companies that nothing got reported to the office. So we only started measuring the safety KPIs after the advent of ISM code, and maybe a little bit before, with like the DNV SEP rules were there before and the ISMA code was there before ISM code came in. So and also it's the parameters to judge are not the same. A typical general cargo ship spent 8 to 10 days in port working the cargo. Compare that to a typical container ship, which is carrying 5 times that amount of cargo and having a turnaround of 8 hours. So the number of ships in the world have increased. We are now at 60,000. When we came out to sea, there were probably 35,000. I don't know exactly. So the traffic has increased, the turnaround has become faster, and the requirements have changed completely. I mean, SOLAS got done in 1974, MARPOL in 1978, and all of those conventions that we knew at that time totaled together was 2,796 pages. And
Great, sir.
no, I did count this for in preparation for one of my speeches in the late 90s.
That's your credibility. That's your
And
credibility, sir.
today, I think the last time I actually made somebody count it for me was somewhere around the 8,700 pages. So today, every master is supposed to know these 8,700 pages. And this is even excluding everything to do with OPA 90, Chinese rules, AMSA rules, biofouling rules in New Zealand. All of these things are not part of this 8,700 pages. So the pressure on time is much more today on the seafarers. And the other thing is, people react to what others are telling them is the most important thing. So when an inspector of whatever variety comes on board and he makes a big song and dance about some signature missing on somewhere, or creates a atmosphere of punishment, then the seafarer thinks that that is the most important thing to tackle. So in the tanker industry, it's the SIRE inspections, because if the SIRE inspection goes bad, the tanker goes on technical hold, the commercial viability of the ship gets affected. So for them, that is what takes the highest priority at that moment in time. And at the end of the day, given the number of good days and bad weather days, etc., the seafarer has to have a normal life like any other human being. So while we have increased regulations over the years, we have not increased the manning scales. So we probably are still reducing manning scales everywhere in our industry. So if you take the entire combination, I think the seafarer of today is doing a much better job than we did in our good old days. All the safety statistics of the industry indicate that since the 1990s, the overall number of accidents has reduced, loss of life has reduced, and pollution incidents have reduced. Pollution incidents are, I would say, not even like, they are probably 1/10 or one tenth or 1/20th of what it used to be in the 70s. So for me, the seafarer of today is whom I would salute to say, you're doing a much better job than we did.
I fully agree with you, but I have got little something with due respect with a pinch of salt. She said, today what I'm doing a lot of mentoring for, I'm on few companies panel by grace of God. doing mentoring, navigation assessment, and mentoring for the many seafarers, starting from master down the run to third mate. This is basically from the navigation aspect. What I have realized, sir, that when you talk about, okay, electronic aids to navigation, definitely, 100%, come what may. They are boon to the mariners compared to what we never had, all those things. But when you actually talk about the failure of any of those equipment, when we talk about the redundancy part of it, I found that during my interview of umpteen number of mariners, even with due respect and without prejudice, the senior masters. I'll give you one example. I was interviewing one master, almost my age, my cadre, and I asked him one simple question, Captain Saab, your vessel is navigating and she's on innocent passage between point A and B in the coastal waters. And I'm giving you kind of a hypothesis where I say that, you have had a emergency, a blackout, and by such time the emergency generator takes over. And of course, you have solar's required UPS connected to the disk. But once the power is recouped, you found some because of some IC or something, all the EGDIS are coupled, and you do not have a paper chart, and you're in the coastal passage. What would you do? I do agree that this is a hypothesis, but this is to prepare the mariners for the practical knowledge of seamanship. I will not go much into it. Please, if you get some time, I've already broadcast a lecture on my channel that what the master should do in case of a complete shutdown of EGDIS and he doesn't have the paper charts, what action shall he take? So I'm just talking about it from that point of view. Yes, your point is very well taken that yes, the efficiency has enhanced by and large, and the turnover has increased. Number of ships about few decades ago were less. Number of turnarounds were much less, and today it has increased. And yes, it has certainly empowered and overpressured a mariner today as of yesterday. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
Right, sir. So the next thing I'd like to, bring it to your notice is uh, with respect to the human element and the mental health, sir, what's your view? Because as you've already spoken that, the efficiency has enhanced, but we need to look after the seafarer when you talked about the container vessel. Before the turnaround of a cargo ship was few days, now it's about 7-8 hours. But what about the seafarer's health? It's basically man and machine interface because 6, 7, 8 hours on a computer on a container vessel, the mariner may not get time to step ashore. And if this is the modus operandi, then obviously 4 months for a senior officer and probably 6, 7 months for a junior officer, which certainly would affect the mental health and the human element and well-being. What's your take on this, sir?
Mental health is a serious issue, and it's not something that is only affecting the seafarers. If we look at the suicide rates of youngsters in any country, they have nearly doubled or tripled over the last 3 decades. You're free to Google at any time and see that it is
No,
a
I take your
problem.
word because you have done so much of research, and to me, when you make a statement, it'll be like a Bible for me, sir,
So there are
or Gita.
so there is a issue across the world with suicide rates, and the seafarers we recruit are coming from the same 18-year-olds that are going to a university somewhere. The pressure on the 18-year-olds to achieve and perform is much more than what it used to be for an 18-year-old. There are various studies about why the mental health of teenagers especially is getting worse. I'm not a psychologist or a researcher in that area, but when it comes to shipping, the dynamics of it were always there, that we go into a ship at the age of, let's say, 18, and the person is the youngest person on board. There is nobody else on board generally. If you're lucky, you have two cadets, but generally it's one cadet on board or one trainee seaman on board. And so he doesn't have anybody of his peer group. They're all kind of older than him. That with all the other issues with respect to what I just said about fast turnarounds, etc., the advent of social media and the habit that everybody is getting into of less human interaction versus, um, the kids are all the time being on their phones. I always joke with parents that if you really want attention from your 13-year-old on the dining table, just send them a text. You're more likely to get a response than by asking questions like, how was your school today? The best you would get is,
Very
everything was
true. Very
fine,
true. Very true.
while they are busy texting their friends or on the dining table. So what can we do, I think, is more important. I think the companies also have an obligation to provide an ecosystem on board which tends to let the people who are having mental issues to be more open about it and to talk about it. Mental health is a taboo in most countries even today. There is a kind of, let's say, antipathy towards taking psychiatric help. If somebody is going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, typically society kind of considers that there is something not right about this person, and even employers tend to discriminate against them. In reality, a mental health issue is a mental illness. And if we are happy to go to a doctor for a headache or for an injured limb, we should be able to talk to a doctor also about the state of our mind, because the consciousness of the mind pretty much decides whether we are going to be happy that day or we are going to be depressed that day. And that openness is needs to be encouraged in the maritime industry. I think most large companies today are doing that. I mean, I can quote examples from Anglo Eastern that there is a buddy system. When a cadet goes on board, somebody is assigned, a third officer or a fourth engineer would be assigned to look after that cadet so that they are the closest in age to them. There are things like encouraging everybody on a Sunday to come have, interaction with each other, uh, and not just be in their cabins. We used to call it social Sundays. There were many such measures, a hotline being provided so that the person having the issue can speak to someone ashore. Anglo Eastern employs 4 psychologists and has helplines for everything. And I'm sure all the major companies do exactly the same thing. So while the effort is there, and over the last 3 years, there has been a great increase in companies taking on this responsibility of providing the right atmosphere on board. There is still something that is not good in the maritime industry. When someone signs off from a ship because of a state of depression or whatever issue related to
Compassionate
mental
ground.
health, then typically our manning industry has a problem in taking that person back on a ship, because they fear that they might get into trouble for having taken that person if that person were to commit suicide. However, we don't hesitate to take a person back after a illness of some other kind. So that understanding in the corridors of companies, in the decision making part of the company, needs to be better to say, hey, if a doctor, a certified psychiatrist, understands what sea life is, the isolation, long voyages, etc., but still declares that person to be medically fit, then we should be taking that person back. And I know that I am speaking of something that most manning agents don't want to talk about, because it's more like, I don't want to take that call on it. So, but that's part of the reasons why we discourage people, or we create an environment. So they hear about it. Or so and so signed off because he said he was depressed and now he's been waiting 8 months for a ship. So in reality, then the company in question would create an environment whereby we are discouraging people to report mental issues. And there is a very thin line between people being depressed and some small percentage of them who decide to do something to take away their own life. It's a very fine line, and given the right training to recognize these symptoms, the seafarers should be helping each other. I remember in Anglo Eastern we got the book called a booklet called Suicide Prevention Guidelines, was written down more than at least 10 or 12 years ago. And the reason why we did it is because, yes, there was an incident of a suicide, and then I happened to speak to a few psychologists and started to get, and my wife, who died a few years ago, 12 years ago,
Oh, I'm
was a
very
trained
sorry to hear that, sir.
psychologist and a clinical psychologist at that,
Sorry
with
to
an
hear that,
MPhil.
sir.
So when I started speaking to her about it and we kind of tried to understand, I realized that in our profession, we are too macho. We all, if a guy comes to say he's feeling lonely, the typical response he will get from his senior people on board is, come on, don't be a baby. You can do it. It's no big deal. You know, what's the problem? We have all done it. So the choice of words, whether they makes a difference to that person who's going through an health issue, mental health issue. And that is where we need to train our senior officers and everybody in the company to be more accommodating and understanding of the issues that a person who is, it's not by choice that people get depressed. Nobody goes and says, I want to be depressed tomorrow. Things happen to them which they may not fully comprehend. And we are all emotional people at the end of the day, but we are different in the way we handle our emotions. So the same kind of a news for one person may be disastrous. For another person, it may be, yeah, it's okay, it happens. So that's where I think
Sir,
it is.
I would like to, I'm sorry, apologize, interject here. I'll just like to tell you a little bit about my little credentials. I had sailed with oil majors for almost 18 plus years. This goes back way back 40 years ago when I switched over after my cadetship with Volumes to Mobile, and thereafter I was with Chevron. Mobile, I was about 12, 13 years, 6 years with Chevron approximately. The approach, what I'd seen with them, I'm not talking about the OCIM of decorum and all that. I'm talking about the safety culture. Almost 40 years ago, we had HR, human resources, call toll free in case you find racial discrimination or any kind of prejudices. At that point in time, the culture of these all majors was something what still are without prejudice. Are many management companies have still not been matured enough to have that sort of adaptability. Because when I was working with the oil majors, I'll tell you, I joined as a third mate. At that point in time, I'm sorry, after I got married as a third mate, I was allowed to carry sail with my wife, and everything served on the platter, and which helped me in a way, perhaps because human element was taken care of, motivated me to do more than what I could ever think of doing it. But unfortunately, what I see here in my own perception, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we are not doing enough for the mariners today. Yes, on the books, on the paper, and when we talk about lots of other things, things are there. But when you talk about the factuality, like today, a few of our comrades, I will not name them, they're trying to fight out for a short leave for a mariner on an Indian coast. And look at the results, sir. I will be interviewing those comrades of ours in due course. But I would say that is ominous. That is the omnipresence of it is there. What else one can say? Are we bonded labor, sir? No. We have been treated like this. And a mariner or a seafarer basically becomes a frog in a well, sir. What's your take on this, sir?
I think it's criminally irresponsible for any port to deny shore leave to a seafarer. I also believe that it is commercial world will always look at only one thing, which is profits and money. But I think that understanding that a human being who's spending 4 to 6 months or 9 months on a ship, and in COVID, people have even spent 13 months on board, they are like all of us ashore. They need their little time to relax. And I think the good companies, they allow for that. I mean, if a master today basically says that, look, we are all extremely tired and we're not going to sail this ship for 6 hours more. I know it doesn't happen too frequently, but if and when they do it, in reality, nobody in has can say anything to the master, but we don't really create that environment where they feel free to say that. So similarly, not giving shore leave to people when it is reasonable to ask for it, that I think is incorrect. Never mind in which country it is incorrect for the shore authorities because they forget. And a lot of time the harbor masters, etc., are also ex-seafarers. So it is a pity that they forget that what sea life was for during their time. And they will all have stories about all the good things that they had in country A or B, uh, their little escapades. But when it comes to actually giving shore leave, a lot of them, I think, are not doing the right thing by stopping shore leave.
I'll share with you a little bit and being very honest and appreciate your honesty. In my own humble opinion, I find that the masters today are getting governed on a computer tactics. When we talk about under the ISM code, exercising master's overriding authority, which is the first thing a PSC or a vetting inspector would like to cite, Captain, where's your overriding authority? Is it posted in your office, etc. or not? And I had been a bit ruffian many a times as a master of 23 years in command. I did exercise many times overriding authority. I'll not name the company where I'd done almost close to 2 decades as a master, where I was on a run between Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and it was a product tanker. And I had a multinational crew. I did have extra officer, but they were so exhausted that at one point in time I said, "Look, this is too much." I did exercise my master's overriding authority at that point in time. I'm talking about quite a few years back, where it was not so precarious to anchor in the South China Sea due northeast of Horsburgh. I did those measures, but the thing which actually not I wouldn't say motivated me, but the thing which actually sufficed me within my own conscience was my training with the oil major for almost close to 2 decades, sir. And that's where I appreciated. See, in my case, what it was. At the most, I would have lost my job, but I would have lost any life under my command. I would have not had any accident incidents. I would have still been with my COC, etc. But today, my heart goes for mariners. With so much of pressure, mainly commercial pressure, which governs the industry. Even a master also gets so much succumbed under pressure that he or she forgets to exercise the due diligence or overriding authority when we talk about the mandatory convention like SOLAS, MARPOL, ILO, etc., 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 or STCW work rest hours.
True that the pressure is there, but I think if you were to read any of the law news cuttings of these ancient newspapers that were around in 100 years ago. There was
Yes,
commercial
sir.
pressure even at that time on the masters. And I think it's a the reason why ISM code had to put that into a document was that the regulators were very much aware that this pressure exists, and hence to protect the master, this paragraph was put into the ISM code. Sometimes though I feel that the pressure is perceived rather than actual. We and there is a reason behind it. We have created, as the communications became better, we moved from Morse code to telex to VSATs and Starlink today. What changed? What changed was that the master, on going away on a voyage, was left with the authority to take decisions. As the communications became cheaper and cheaper, the office people started to say, ask me before you do anything, because now on a WhatsApp call, it doesn't cost anything to call
Is
up the
it
office and
something like,
ask
sir? Is it
anything.
something like this, sir? That too many cooks spoil the broth.
Not too many cooks. I don't think the hierarchy in the offices ashore has changed.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
but it's, I think the whole, without realizing, we are now into an era where everybody wants to know everything instantaneously.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, I have heard conversations many times between vessel managers and masters. Why didn't you report to me immediately? Yeah, sure. What, as a master, and I'm on the side of the master on this aspect. Really, I mean, what would you have helped me sitting 5,000 miles away besides spending 10 minutes on the phone to tell you and answer questions? How would you have helped me? So I have always got the training done to say that the master must take his overriding authority and use it at his discretion. Uh, if there is a fire on board, you don't really want your master to be calling the office at that time to ask something. That's the time when his training has to, uh, all the fire drills that he's done throughout life, that's when he needs to take action. And yes, maybe in today's modern days, maybe you can put a WhatsApp message to say, I'm fighting a fire, don't need any assistance, we'll call you later. Maybe that will not harm anything. But
Sir, today,
this,
as I'm sorry to interject you, sir, today what is happening that, the masters are getting promoted earlier, which is good, fantastic, excellent. At the same time, they are being governed by the shore-based organization, the marine superintendents and all that. They forget their own initiative. They forget that what they are supposed to do as a master. I'm not saying without, again, I'm saying without prejudice, they are more than happy to please their superiors. In in that kind of episode, they forget their own obligations, responsibilities, and all that. Am I right when I say so, sir? With your experience and expertise?
I would say that yes, I agree that there is a certain amount of this factor that everything needs to be discussed with the office immediately or before taking any action. Yes, I agree that there is a little bit of that happening. So, see, this is where training comes in and the company culture comes in. If the company encourages a culture of empowerment, if they are constantly giving the message to the master saying, you have this authority and use it, please, we will support you. If we create a supportive organization, then in that particular organization, the masters will feel free. And even though um, I don't want to sound as if it is a perfect world, but I would say in Anglo-Eastern, the culture was extremely well founded of one of empowerment of each and every seafarer. I have many, many examples from my 30 years where an AB or an OS or a cadet has actually challenged the senior officers when something was not being done in the right way. So each company is different, and within each company, there are pockets which may be not at the same level of a good safety culture as another pocket, especially in very large organizations. But in general, that's a constant pressure on the senior management, that how do we keep a culture of keep making our seafarers feel secure. There is a term that the psychologists like to use, they call it psychological safety. And it is important to create that psychological safety in any organization for people to give their best to the organization. But I do
Well
agree that
noted,
there is
sir.
a bit of a problem there.
Yes, sir. Now, allow me to ask you something out of the curriculum. I may ask you a little crisp question and request you an honest answer. You see, most of the companies today want to hire a marine superintendent who, of course, is in command of 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 1 year. The age group between 35 to 40, approximately. Because they look at the perspective that, okay, he's there. By such time, we groom him. And by such time, he retires, will be 60 plus approximately. Now, when we talk about the experienced master like you, I'm going to say, honestly speaking, sir, I'm not mincing my words. If I had my own company, I would have said, Captain Pradeep Chawla, sir, with your experience, expertise, and the spade work what you have carried out, I don't think I would have ever be able to find a suitable candidate like you. Of course, none of us is a walking encyclopedia, but at the same time, hypothetically, there is no replacement for you, sir. So when we talk about from that perspective, sir, like I'm a master with 60 years old. I've got 23 plus years command, 43 years out at sea under my belt. But I know I'm redundant as far as the marine superintendent or any job is concerned. However, I don't need that. By grace of God, I'm very well settled. So why this disparity is there? They want a competent marine superintendent. Because if I suppose you are there at the helm as a marine superintendent, I'm the master, and you are telling me, first thing it will prompt me, Arey yaar, Captain Pradeep Chawla, he has got so many number of years behind him. And if he's telling me, suggesting me something, maybe there's a reason. Maybe I can ask him and clarify. And you will be able to give me a logical reasoning and with a complete explanation. But if I or you are sailing as the master and the marine superintendent is hardly 40 odd years, I am not prejudiced against his age. I'm prejudiced with his experience, sir. What can he impart me when I'm in a catch-22 situation, sir? And that's where I believe, in my own humble opinion, the industry is going all hunky-dory in the wrong direction, if I'm not mistaken, sir. Please correct me.
Okay, let's try and put this from a different perspective.
Yes, sir.
The experience is certainly important. However, every organization has a need to prepare itself for the future. And the reason why most companies are looking for, you mentioned a certain age group, 35, 40, though I don't think there can be cases where people could even be younger or much older and still be taken into the job as a vessel manager. So the companies are looking to find individuals who are knowledgeable, on the ball, and who have a learning mindset of preparing for the future. So there are it's a reality that as technology changes, the requirement of the people looking after that technology also changes. So while we learned our skills on a parallel ruler and a paper chart, today, as you well know, no master can be navigating well if he's not utilizing the egg disk thoroughly, right? I mean, he needs to be able to know his equipment thoroughly. So there is
Yes,
a
sir.
little bit of a balancing act that each organization has to do, is to have experienced people to guide the junior people. However, so let's take the example of what's happening on the engine side now in the industry. We are moving towards a world of connected ships, right? Every machinery on board will be connected and or is being connected. and brought ashore the data, and for then the data is analyzed, presently more manually than, but at a later stage we will do machine learning and get better insights into our data. Now this whole transition that is happening from a standard two-stroke engine with a standard engine room to a well-connected, software-driven engine with everything coming ashore and going to some supercomputer, it does require a different type of a chief engineer now, someone who is willing to look at the problems of such a ship rather than the standard ship that we had. And that is the reason why uh, the companies try to bring in some people who are younger but with the, let's say, more digitally savvy. And I'm not saying older people can't be digitally savvy. um, I was fortunate to actually implement the connected ships software of Wärtsilä, Foss and Anglo-Eastern since the last, what, 4 or 5 years. So, but yes, there is a learning curve that each person has to go through to in order to understand the new technology. So the person heading the technical department has this dilemma that, do I take people with the full experience, or do I trust the older people in the office to give that guidance and mentorship to the younger people and prepare the company for alternate fuels, digitally connected ships, machine learning, AI softwares, etc. That's the transition that is happening today that the industry needs to find a handle on. So look, right now, the total number of ships, let's say roughly 60,000. My guess is that we, as an industry, we probably have less than 5,000 ships where we are bringing the data ashore. There is a counter argument from people to say, why do we need to bring this data ashore? Because we have a chief engineer on board and he knows what to do with that engine. Partly true, but also the chief engineer is seeing data for his one ship. What that supercomputer ashore is doing is taking the data from 100, 500, 5,000 ships and churning it all together to find the right insights and intelligence out of the combined data. So if you have a MAN XYZ engine running on 5,000 ships, but you're picking up and learning from data from one ship, it is not as good as learning from the 5,000 ships that are feeding data ashore. So that's where the challenge comes, and we are all in the industry balancing this act of how do we transition to the future. And yes, autonomous ships are being discussed. Yes, they're going to be 50 years away or 40 years away or whatever. The regulatory framework is more important in that than the ability to connect, because the ability to connect a ship is already there. I mean, in Anglo-Eastern, we were already 540 ships out of the 650 were fully connected egg disk to the shore, and the engine ones were also being connected. So it's a matter of transition, right? We need the experience people for looking at what can go wrong, and we
We
have the
did
young
have
people.
the similar thing when I was sailing with Chevron, that used to be a bridge integrated system,
Yeah,
where the San Francisco office from Chevron could home on to all the parameters, be it your radars or your engine units, etc., everything. I'm saying this was quite a few years ago floated technology, but adapted of recently and last less than a decade ago. Right, sir. Now, the other question would like to ask you before I know, because it's time for you also. It's a bit odd time for here. So what I'm going to ask you is, sir, what's your take on it? That how from our autonomous authority, what kind of curriculum shall be improvised in order to hone and hone the skills of a younger generation to be more competitive and compatible with the industry? Because I hope you'll agree, because you as our seniors and we as your predecessors, we have been following your footsteps, and we if not excel, but we made a mark because of you all guys' guidance. That is my seniors and our seniors. So, what's your take on it? Onto it? Is there something we need to do as far as the curriculum of the particular cadre is concerned to make him or her much more competitive in the global scenario on the global scenario, sir?
Yes, certainly we need to do something, and so we need to do something very quickly. So the curriculum STCW 2010 last amendments, it is now being amended. The progress, the program has started in IMO. It's going to finish 2028 from what I know. And the challenge is going to always be in writing these conventions that do we change as the curriculum or the convention, the model courses and everything associated fast enough, or are we always chasing the technology? I think in most industries, the regulatory framework is slower than the progress of technology.
Is it
So
because of the bureaucracy, sir? Sorry to interject you.
I wouldn't call it bureaucracy. I would call it the necessity of agreeing something between 150 countries. Uh, if you do not get the consensus, the compliance with that on an international level will not be there. Consensus between a husband and a wife is difficult. Consensus between 150 countries, all with their own big egos, is, you can imagine how difficult it is. I'm sure you know about the IMO process, but it is necessary to get that consensus. I do agree that due to that democratic process, we end up with a least common denominator kind of thing. And so what is decided in IMO is generally the minimum standards and not optimum standards, whether that is for manning scales level, which is my favorite topic because I just don't think we are ever looking at the minimum manning scales in a right way in the IMO resolutions. But to get that consensus is difficult. What can a country do instead? They can drift away from the regulations do allow you to do that. That finally the each flag state is deciding their own curriculum based on the convention, and nothing stops a country, for example, to take away celestial navigation. I mean,
Yes, sir.
there is no sextant on the ships. There is nobody trained for that anymore. And with 4 GPSs on board, possibly a set of GLONASS equipment with the Russian satellite system, and now with the Baidu system from China. I mean, you got to be in World War III for all these systems to fail at the same time.
I will tell
So,
you. I'll share with you one experience. I was crossing Istanbul Straits. I was bound for Ukraine, some port a few years ago. And sorry to interject. I'll share. This will complement your thing, what you're saying. And I had one single gyro, and the gyro failure. And over there, you have a magnetic anomaly of almost 26 degrees. And as far as the GPS is concerned, you have an interface between interference between GPS and GLONASS. Trust me, sir, I found that I'm the only person, only soul on board, at least on the bridge, because all my duty officers were going hunky-dory. And that's where I come from, the practical knowledge of seamanship, sir.
agreed.
And just to add on more, when I interview the masters on the navigational platform, I asked them, okay, Captain, sir, you are on a coastal passage, and you are asking your third mate, second mate to take the LOPs, and now you have a gyro failure. How would you ask your third or second mate to take the LOP? You know, the first answer comes abruptly, which I get myself feel ridiculed. Is, oh, Captain, I'll take bearing and this. I said, sir, you don't have a bearing. Your gyro is kaput, and you have a single gyro. Then he thinks. I said, okay, Captain Sir, how about the magnetic compass? Oh, yes, yes, I can. I said, by such time, if your position fixing interval, let's say, is 10 minutes, by such time, your third mate goes on the Monkey Island or takes the, reading with the Pelorus and converts it to the true. It is already 6, 7, 8 minutes. It's again the time to plot another LOP, and that means he's not basically focusing on the navigation. And then, of course, the prompt comes, okay, I'll take 2 ranges. And then I give him another prompt saying, okay, Captain Saab, your VRM is in error now. And then you give them the response. What I'm trying to put forward, to cut the long story short, sir, that today we have been lacking the practical knowledge of seamanship with, complementing the electronic aids to navigation. Had our basics been good, I mean, so when we talk about a monument, be it a Taj Mahal or a new liberal parliament, what we have today, if the foundations are very strong, the building will never succumb under any kind of external forces, sir. That's where I'm talking about the curriculum, be it the DG shipping. And I'm very straightforward. I don't mince my words because that's where I've switched over my this besides being a master mariner. I speak the truth and mind without any ambiguity, sir.
No, I agree. So certain things in the syllabus needs to be changed. We need to bring in the competencies required for all the alternate fuels. We need to bring in the competencies required for digital ships, all of these things which are connected to the shore. And there will be a lot more new electronic systems that will come into the industry over the next 10 years. And we do need to prepare the seafarers. I always said the same thing to the teachers all the time, that remember, when you're teaching a cadet, you're not teaching him for what was the good practices 20 years ago, but you're teaching him for what will be the good practices in the next 20 years. And so one has to have the balance of a good foundation of understanding. However, one also needs to be aware that a human brain has only that much capacity. So we need to take out something from the past syllabus in order to put in the new syllabus, which is required. So for me, celestial navigation lost its importance even when I was out at sea. I mean,
Saint Mark Hillary, long back rod. Today you asked a seafarer what is the importance of a long back rod. He may misinterpret. Like, sir, मेरे को position मिलती है long back rod. So I'm saying the misconception what they have. And of course, if I'm not mistaken, the sextant old thing have already become redundant.
yeah, there are no sextants on the ships anymore.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
mean,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
some owners still like to have them, and some oil major
Even you
inspectors
ask,
also
if you
like them.
ask your duty officer, give me at least 4 or 5 sextant errors, there will be, it's a topsy-turvy for them. So thank you so much. Coming to the last question, with your present, venture in hand, what do you see? What do you intend to bring up with so many electronic things and be it AI and everything? And I must congratulate you to be a pioneer in this particular thing, what you're venturing out as what we spoke. And as per your resume, sir, what do you intend to do and how can you facilitate not only the maritime industry, but also how can you facilitate with your expertise, with the experience, and with with your leadership? How can you impress upon that?
Well, I like to first do things before saying what I'm doing. I would say the roadmap for me in my new venture is to try and build content that the young people can associate themselves. And I want to make learning as fun. Learning should not be a examination driven activity, because now with chat GPT, who needs examinations to test people? Why do we need any human being anymore to really remember things and put them down in an examination where say, please describe the working of this or working of that? Understanding of it, yes, Finding problems on a running machinery or on an equipment and solving them, yes, that needs to be done. So I believe that if I can help young learners to absorb the knowledge that they need in a medium that they enjoy, and my dream is to be able to kindle that fire in them to learn continuously. Uh, we can, like they say, what's that old adage that they say, you don't give a fish to a hungry man, you teach him how to fish. So what my goal in life is to try and be that facilitator to give them the content so that they enjoy learning about it and they become good at their profession. Because finally, we do all of this to save lives, injuries. We do this to prevent damage to cargo. We do this to prevent damage to the ship. I mean, maritime industry is not changed in thousands of years. Our purpose is to carry cargo safely from place A to place B without any harm to people, property, or environment and property in the correct order. So I hope that I can achieve that in the few years that I plan to be active more, as long as the health stays good. I do intend to
God bless,
continue
sir. We
working.
need you. We need you, sir. God bless you. Trust me, Jai Mata Di, we need you, sir.
Thank you.
We need you, sir. Sir, it has been an honor, true honor, with a legend and a weather mariner, a weather manager who has been right on the top on the industry globally with a fantastic amount of reckoning. Still, he's lying such low, so low. And all I can say, sir, I salute you and I wish you all the best in
Thank you.
all your enterprises, in all your entrepreneurship. And once again, sir, from our Marine Quest Solutions, sir, thank you so much, sir, taking so much your time off during these odd hours and coming onto our platform. Thank you, sir. Goodbye. Take care. Jai Matadi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podium. Thank you very much.
Good day, sir. Thank you.
Bye bye.
God bless. God bless, sir.